Well, Southwest Airlines canceled 350 flights on Monday following a catastrophic holiday weekend of countless delays and over 1,000 cancellations. Southwest cited air traffic control issues and weather. The widespread disruptions began shortly after the Southwest Airlines Pilot Association asked a federal judge to block the airline's order that all employees get vaccinated. But none of those statements from Southwest, its pilot union, or the FAA indicate the issues are related to the mandates. The Southwest Air Pilots Association president addressed what pilots want to bargain on Squawk Box yesterday. Let's take a look at that.
What are the pilots prepared to do if not take the vaccine to, quote, help society at this point?
So I think the two are mutually exclusive. The vaccine mandate and where we are with the lawsuit is really just to get the company to sit down and talk to us and discuss some of our issues that our peers have done, and we see where their vaccination rates are. So all we're trying to do is to get them to sit down and talk to us, which we haven't seen. We've been pushing them for 10 months to do that. Pilots have to maintain a medical certificate as well as their pilot certificate. So we want to sit down and address how that is going to be affected, how our long-term disability, how our loss of license insurance is going to cover. We also have to address sort of natural immunity, antibodies, alternative means of compliance. There's many things that we need to discuss.
Okay, so this is super interesting, and Team Rising is here to weigh in. Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins and senior editor at Reason Robbie Suave are joining us to discuss. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So what's interesting about this from my perspective is that it scrambles all of the usual battle lines and allegiances. And it's not just as that pertains to airlines and Southwest. This is something that is happening around the industries around the country. You can have questions about unions protesting vaccine mandates and the left that purports to be the movement of workers supporting vaccine mandates. Robbie, what do you make of how this is affecting airlines and how it will continue to affect corporations in the future who are going to get pushback from unions over these vaccine mandates?
Yeah, I'm as fascinated as you are. It is really interesting to see. Trump helped scramble, the traditional who's part of which party. There's a lot of, working class union type people who would have been part of the Democratic coalition who are now suddenly more drawn to Trump and to the Republican Party. And then so to cater to them, the Republican Party at least appears to be more interested in workers. So, and that's what's happening with and then that's in the background as this kind of vaccine fight is taking place. Meanwhile, the left, the Democratic Party, progressives are very much pro this new kind of regime of our health bureaucracy. So whatever they say should go. So you have this really interesting moment, right? Decades ago, Reagan would have fired all the air traffic controllers when they went on strike. We're completely reverse from that situation now, where you have Democrats wanting public employees to fall in line with vaccine mandates, Republicans saying, wait a minute, shouldn't workers have rights, et cetera. It's really interesting. I have no idea where it's going to go from here, but it does look like, even if you want to say these problems are not caused actually by a pilot walkout, it's clear that airline personnel are upset and there was protests. So there is, I have a hard time believing that some of the issues aren't at least somewhat related to pilot and staff frustration.
Absolutely.
Right. And Michael, aren't the pilots here making a series of reasonable demands? I mean, antibodies certainly seems like a reasonable thing to put on the table. Asking to sit down with their management and discuss the terms of this arrangement seems reasonable. Seems like what they're looking for is, look, if you're going to mandate that we take this vaccine and there are some long-term health implications from that vaccine, we want to make sure that our health care is covered. We want to make sure that we're taken care of on the back end. And it seems like this is a situation where the precarity of our society is, again, kind of injecting hostility into a conversation that wouldn't be there if we had just a more stable kind of socioeconomic framework in which we could have these conversations.
Yeah, I don't think collective bargaining is really ever a bad thing. But I do think that the fact that everything has been politicized now when it comes to COVID, and especially the getting the COVID vaccine, I think has really created a problem, because what we're seeing now is basically a belief by a lot of people across the country that the air traffic controllers are just not showing up to work, are in effect striking and holding the airplane industry hostage. That's not something that we can really have happen. And so, it is weird, as Robbie noted, that Democrats are now in a position where we're arguing for Reagan's position, where do we fire air traffic controllers? Do we replace them with someone else? I mean, this is a really precarious position to be in. And a lot of it does come from the fact that political lines have been redrawn.
So Jen Psaki was asked about what the White House would say to those who question whether the vaccine mandates have reduced the workforce. Here's her response to that.
What's his answer? What's the White House response to people who say vaccine mandates have reduced the workforce and contributed to this problem?
Well, I know world-renowned business, travel, and health expert Senator Ted Cruz has made that point, but I wouldn't say that that is widely acknowledged or echoed by business leaders who have implemented these mandates, by health experts who have conveyed the way to get out of the pandemic is to ensure that we are doing exactly the steps the president has announced and we are working to implement. It doesn't mean this isn't hard and challenging. Of course it is. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. But ultimately, the job of the president of the United States is to lead, is to follow the advice of health experts, is to ensure that he is protecting the lives of people across the country. So I know there was a little hubbub over the course of the last few days about Southwest Airlines. We now know that some of those claims were absolutely false, and actually the issues were completely unrelated to vaccine mandates. But again, what we've seen business to business across the country is this is the way to save lives, create more certainty. It's good for the economy, and it's something we're looking forward to implementing.
Yeah, so they don't want to own this. And notice how she says some of the issues, not all of the issues. She's very careful there to say that was cautious language for sure, because again, they don't want to own the outcome of this. And Robbie, if we continue pulling at the thread of sort of the scrambled battle lines here, it's really interesting because people like Senator Marco Rubio have floated the idea of conservatives or anti-woke employees needing union protection from woke capitalism in the future. And this is kind of it, where you have these private businesses, especially airlines, where people are on in close quarters with the staff, saying, we think the best way to get people back in the air is to require that all of our employees be vaccinated. And we want that level of publicity. We want people to think that they're safe flying with us. But that's sort of the left's insistent position on this. They don't want to give an inch, even to what Ryan said, the point where if you have antibodies, they won't give an inch on anything. What do you make of what this says about the sort of merging between the cultural left and corporate America?
Yeah, Psaki's statement was incredibly dishonest. Look, it's clear that the struggle to deal with the vaccine mandate is causing some issues. There are some workers who are not working because of this, who don't want to work, because it's totally inflexible. Right, not exempting people with antibodies is ridiculous. It's scientifically unsound. But this is what happens when all policy must be at government level. Wouldn't it be great if private companies could, and their workforce, they could decide in conversation with their workers representatives, what makes the most sense for this firm? Maybe we're going to want to require people to get vaccinated, but if some people have reasonable objections or they have antibodies or they're going to do something else, we can make that happen. That would be ideal. But it's at the level of government policy where you have Biden and Democrats saying, no, you must do this. And then you have some Republican state officials, Republican governors saying, no, you are prohibited from doing this. And this is there's going to be court fights between them. It's the worst. It's the stupidest way to do policy. We could leave it up to individual organizations, companies, et cetera, to chart the right course. But it's totally inflexible when it's solely at the government's discretion.
And so, Michael, how long do you think this will last? COVID case counts are now plummeting, and the way that you can tell that they're plummeting is that the media isn't talking about COVID case counts anymore. When they're soaring, it's all you hear about. Your entire timeline is just covered in red lines shooting straight up. When they're coming back down, everybody. I don't know exactly why. Maybe they don't want to jinx it, but the case numbers are plummeting. So because so many people now have either natural immunity or have been vaccinated, at what point do Democrats say, you know what, we're lifting the mandates? At this point, you should get the vaccine, but we're not mandating it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that there's no variants that are going to come out through the winter. With everybody being inside, I think we probably will see some uptick in cases just by pure nature of everybody being in close quarters. But I think at the end of the day, this mirrors what we saw by we, I mean history, in 1918 with the Spanish flu. I mean, there was a lot of controversy and a lot of debate over how we go about making sure that people don't continue to spread it and how people do get some sort of immunity to it. And so we're not in new territory. Every time there's a new disease or a new virus, we see this type of behavior and we see people taking advantage of the situation. And so I think what we've got to do is look at this again in kind of the spectrum of history and learn from it so that when the next thing happens, we're a lot more prepared.
Yeah, and they partied like crazy in the 1920s coming out of that pandemic.
They did. The economy was doing pretty well.
It did. Everybody opened up. Well, Robbie, Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have more Rising for you after this.